Hi, and welcome. This episode is for all of you trying to evolve your brand and your message as you grow your company. Our guest today is the president and CEO of an engineering firm that partners with clients to design and develop things like mechanical and electrical infrastructure, control and automation solutions, and safety compliance for really complicated facilities. So think semiconductor or life sciences. They deal with a lot of facilities that have to be really, really clean or ones that require hazardous materials to operate. And so lots of complicated engineering work, big tasks that are going on there. So today he's going to talk to us about corporate messaging and how it evolves over time. He'll talk to us about where company culture and corporate messaging intersect. And he'll talk a little bit about how to maintain your brand during rapid seasons of growth. They've experienced a ton of growth in the last 8 years or so, and what it looks like to maintain that brand as you even open new offices and expand regionally and into different locations. And finally, he'll talk about what it looks like to make sure your employees and your staff and all of your teams really know and embody your brand. All right, listen up.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, TREW Marketing. TREW is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit trewmarketing.com. And now, on with our podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm Morgan Norris, hosting again for Wendy as she's still off on vacation. And I handle brand strategy here at TREW Marketing. And today I'm joined by Keith Flaherty, who's president and CEO of Hallam-ICS. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah, we're so glad you could be here. So we, as an agency, have worked with Hallam in different capacities over the last, I think, 7 years. And so I wanted to have Keith on here today to talk a little bit about kind of how they've grown, how their marketing expertise and activities have grown over the last 7 or 8 years. And so Keith, tell us a little bit about Hallam and what you guys do as a company and kind of who you are as people.
Okay. Well, let me start back in 1981 when Dave Hallam founded the company in Vermont as a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering, or MEP firm. Dave started the company the day after he received his professional engineering license from the state of Vermont because he wanted to create a company where people felt valued, where there was going to be open communication, and where responsibilities and rewards were shared. So we've grown through the years pretty rapidly. We've added new services, we've opened new offices, but we've always tried to stay true to that culture that Dave had envisioned. So today we provide engineering, control system integration, commissioning and validation, and electrical safety services from 6 offices from Vermont down to Texas. We work for clients in the semiconductor, life sciences, and food and beverage, as well as the advanced research industries. We are 100% employee-owned through an employee stock ownership program, or an ESOP. This means that every employee owns shares in Hallam-ICS. And it's consistent with our belief that everyone contributes to the success of the company and everyone should share in the wealth that's created by the company. We don't believe that that wealth should be concentrated in a small group of partners or be part of the return for a private equity firm. We're also a certified B Corporation. And that means that we believe we exist for purpose as well as profit. If you're not familiar with Certified B, there's roughly 8,500 companies worldwide, well-known brands such as Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, 7th generation. It reflects our value of our social mission. We're very active in our communities, giving our time, our talent, and our resources to local organizations in the communities that we have offices.
So Keith, in leading Hallam, Hallam is one of the companies for sure that we've worked with over time that is able to really kind of tout that employee culture. Everybody wants to think that their culture is a differentiator But it's truly kind of those efforts that you guys have put in that really show that you're walking what you talk. And so talk a little bit about how do you use that company culture to help recruit and retain employees? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so that's such a timely topic, Morgan, and not just because of the tight labor market. I think it's always there for us as business owners, business leaders. Uh, and I think we do like to think our culture is a differentiator, but only for those for whom it's a right fit. It's
Mm,
not a differentiator for everyone. So I'll tell a little story first about it. As an ESOP, as an employee-owned company, every year we have to hire a valuation company. And the valuation company comes in and they look through your business, they look at your past performance, your future projections, and they assign a new share price to the company. And the consultant came in one day and he said to me, he says, Keith, I want you to know you're in the elevator business. And of course, I'm a little puzzled here. And looking at him, he continues. He says, what I mean by that is every day, the most valuable parts of Hallam comes in to the office on the elevator. And at the end
mm,
of every day, they leave on the elevator. And essentially what he was saying was that as a services company, people are the most important part and most valuable part of our business. And so we try to use that both in recruiting and in retention. And a few years ago, we created the position of Director of People and Culture. And as we were researching strategic HR and how we can incorporate that to improve retention as well as recruiting, we came up with two concepts that we always ask ourselves when we're making decisions. We want every employee owner at Hallam-ICS, both current as well as
mm,
past, to say, Hallam is the best company I've ever worked for. We also
mm,
want them to say, this is the best job I've ever had. So you want to be a company that they're proud of, but also work that is challenging and fulfilling. And it not one or the other. It really has to be both. So we've been really fortunate over our history of past 43 years of business to attract some really talented and just wonderful people into the organization. Our retention rates are higher than industry average. And what we hear most often from our employees of being important is culture, but more specifically, it's flexibility, it's balanced lives, it's challenging work. It's obviously compensation is always important. The lack of micromanagement, coworkers that they like and appreciate, as well as transparency. So we're open book. We share everything. We have employees who sit on our board of directors. I sit in a
mm.
cubicle. There's really no secrets here, and people appreciate that. We also spend a lot of time educating our employees on our business, and then we give them the tools they need to be successful. On the recruiting front, I think it's just we share our story with candidates. And for the
Mhm.
right candidates, I think it resonates. And we don't try to make ourselves into somebody that we're not, just as it's really important to create that trust and that honesty in the interview process so that a candidate doesn't overpresent themselves. It doesn't do anybody any good if either one of us is not really expressing who we are and what life will be like working together. So I think that's really how we've used that to benefit ourselves in terms of the recruiting as well as in the retention.
Yeah, I think just from working with you guys, so we did a messaging project recently, and sitting around the table with your leadership and the people kind of tasked with making some big decisions and really kind of guiding the company, and just seeing the tenure of those people and their careers at Hallam is really impressive. And it's not often that you end up in that situation where a lot of times people are coming with a lot of outside views, and that's totally fine. But man, to sit in a room and talk about what are the differentiators of this company with the people who have helped build it and make it stronger over time is really significant, I think, and really powerful. And I will say too, everyone is really happy. So Keith said, just this balance and work-life balance and, um, enriching employees' lives and the communities. And you can tell when we work with you guys and when I've talked to your customers before, hey, what is it about Hallam? And they go, oh my gosh, we are able to work with the same person over and over again. We don't have this turnover in a team. Our Hallam team knows us really well. And it's so valuable to your customers as well. So I've gotten to see that, I think, firsthand as we've worked with you guys and engaged with some of your customers too in interviews. That said, you guys have grown a ton in the last handful of years. I would love to hear a little bit of a snapshot of kind of where you were 7 or 8 years ago when you started working with TREW, and then where you guys are right now as far as a company and your marketing efforts, how you think about that. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot to touch on there. Yeah, so back in, I think it was 2016 timeframe, we started working with TREW, and we reached out. Well, maybe I should share a story on why we reached out. So I think in 2005, we hired a marketing research firm, and we were saying, help us with our branding, help us with our messaging.
Yeah.
So they researched our competition, looked at our industry, they interviewed several of our clients, and they came back with their findings, and they said, okay, Hallam, here are our results. Hallam-ICS, challenging to date, but great to marry. And that's always stuck with us, right? So and what they were saying is, you're not always the easiest to get to know. Maybe you're not the most outgoing or have the best marketing, but once a company works with us, they want to work with us more and usually stay on with us as a long-term client. So we reached out to TREW, and 7 or 8 years ago, we decided we want to become less challenging to date. We were probably 80 or 90 people at the time. Today, we're about 140. And we've grown both in size, but also in expertise. And also, I would say, in our marketing savvy. So Natasha Urina leads our marketing department. And I think 7 or 8 years ago, she was like, hey, we need to refresh. We need to get a better voice, a better presentation of who we are. We also need to learn about this thing called inbound and inbound marketing, because, and she met some resistance. There are a lot of people here who said, our engineers are not going to do a Google search to hire somebody to do what we do. They're going to do their research in other ways. And, I guess as we learned, that wasn't the case. And we heard about TREW, and we heard about TREW's expertise on marketing for engineers. And you all really educated us very well on that process. So that's a bit of, we've tried to stay who we are in terms of as people, but definitely have grown and expanded and gotten into some new areas, and some of it's due to the marketing efforts.
That's great. Yes. And that's such a testament, I think, to just being able to work in and out. There's times where we'll do a larger project, and it's kind of it might be a website overhaul or something like that. And then there are times where there are, Natasha's running the ship with you guys as well. And then there are just some things of, what's the best practice here? How do we move forward on this? Should we go this direction or that direction? And so kind of that consulting aspect is great as well. Talk to me a little bit about some of your growth in niche expertise areas. So because I've worked with you, I know, but I would love to hear a little bit about, you guys have doubled down on a few different things: toxic gas monitoring, arc flash, some different safety services, really the semiconductor industry. Talk about kind of that as a strategy and what that has looked like for your team as you guys have grown.
Yeah. So we've done a couple of things there. So, historically, one of the things that we learned 20 years ago was that we wanted to make sure we're a diversified company. So we were heavily concentrated in one industry 20 years ago. And while it was a lot of fun, it led to a lot of pain when that industry went into a down cycle. So there are those companies who say we want to be the absolute best at one or two things. We try to be diversified across our service lines, across our regions, and across the markets that we provide our services to. And arc flash and toxic gas in particular, as you call them, niche services, are those, we had groups that really bought into inbound marketing and saw the value. And they created content from day one, both blogs, websites, webinars, and really helped us to gain visibility in the marketplace. So we performed very well in search metrics for those service lines and have generated many leads. And we look at it on an annual basis, we generate about $1 million of new business from our inbound leads. But I think as you do this over time, that client acquisition, if you can turn those clients into repeat clients, it's much more than the $1 million a year. If you look at what those clients have become, if you can maintain them for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So that's been really the key aspect for us. And I think it was getting that buy-in and that commitment from key leaders of those niche services, particularly our arc flash electrical safety, which we do nationwide, as well as toxic gas monitoring, which we do nationwide in semiconductor facilities. So did that answer your question, Morgan?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that as a strategy to use inbound marketing on those services that people are searching for, like you said, our engineer is going to do a Google search for what we do. And there are so many aspects of what you guys do that we can create content around, and we can help educate people so that when they are ready to make the decision, you guys are top of mind as far as brand awareness. And as well, some of those key services that are critical for things like semiconductor, where you've got hazardous materials, and you guys are really experts in working in that, have been just a great way to attract that inbound audience. I was looking at just some of the historical data with you guys, and it's year over year increasing new contacts by 5-6 digit numbers, right? As time goes on from starting inbound marketing back in 2016 to today, and which is just huge as far as visibility too and brand awareness. So back to the niche areas, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we landed with messaging and web recently, kind of as we market specific services and niche industry expertise areas. And really, I just want to have this conversation because I feel like your team handled it really well. And it's an ongoing discussion, but it is top of mind for so many companies like yours of, do we lead with this service area expertise, or do we lead with our industry expertise? And so talk to me a little bit about that, what it looks like internally, and how you guys are kind of talking about that externally as you're in these key vertical industries.
Well, you were really patient with us through that process. I think it's a really difficult thing for our industry to figure out. So we always tell ourselves, hey, we're organized functionally as an organization. So you have your internal structure, your internal organization, which means we have an engineering team, we have a control system team, our arc flash team, and our commissioning and validation team. But we deliver them functionally, but we also deliver them into those verticals, into the markets. So we have people who are experts in life sciences. We have people who are experts in the semiconductor. And what we have to ask ourselves is, how do our clients buy those services? Are they buying them as a functional service, or are they buying them based upon the industry experience? And we always believe that and we've experienced on outbound sales calls, is one of the first questions that we receive is, have you ever worked in a facility like mine? And so that gives us insight into what they are thinking. So we've tried to do that with the messaging, right? And we're trying to resolve that. And I think we landed on having both services and industries represented, but having some of that cross-pollination in the messaging, particularly for the key industries.
Yeah, I just think it's something that needs addressed, because a lot of times people want like a exact silver bullet of, we're always going to talk about it this way, or we're always going to talk about it that way. And one thing we really tried to do was arm your team with some messages so that you can tell the story of your expertise in semiconductor. You guys have been doing this for decades and decades. And I want someone who's done a cursory amount of research when they go and talk to your sales guys. I want them to know that already, right? We want to have this messaging out in front of you guys that's positioning you as the experts that you are in semiconductor and in life sciences, in these key verticals. And the other piece to that is, it only works when it's true, right? And so you can have all the messaging you want, but if you start talking to that initial, you start with that initial phone call and it's clear that you can't back up your messaging, it doesn't work. But with you guys, you've got the expertise. So let's, how do we lead with that story of where you guys are in the industry? I love that. So then talk to us a little bit. Our messaging for you guys has evolved over time. So touching on that, kind of going from this a little bit of isolated, these are the exact services we provide, this is how we're structured internally, to that bigger story. Talk a little bit about kind of how you mentioned you you train your employees with your messaging. You've got this kind of strong culture around what you do. Talk a little bit about what it's looked like to evolve that messaging over time, and then to make sure that your teams that are dispersed around the country really can own that.
Yeah, so I think this is always a challenge, and especially it's a challenge, to your point, if the messaging isn't true. When the messaging is true, it's much easier for people to speak to it. And as we know with engineers, I think engineers get a bad rap as not being good salespeople. Engineers are good salespeople when they're confident in their knowledge and in their ability, and they feel that what they are saying is true. If you ask them to misrepresent something or to speak to something that they don't feel as an expert in, then they're not going to be very effective. And that's actually a wonderful trait, right? It's a sense of honesty
Yeah.
and integrity that engineers have. So there were several things I think we tried to work through this year, which I'm sure other companies have as well. And I'd be interested in your perspective on this as well, Morgan, is we were kind of going from that small company where we presented a lot of very personal and try to create intimacy in the website with our people. Mm-hmm. We had, individual photos, my Hallam stories, a lot of different things that were culturally based and that we created kind of that sense of, friendliness, responsiveness that you have from the small local firm. And we want to maintain some of that, but we also want to express ourselves and present ourselves as something a bit larger and more capable and more professional, able to take on the most challenging projects, the largest projects, but while still being different than, the multinational or international engineering firms that come in, where it's a bit more impersonal. You're, just one of thousands of clients. We still wanted to maintain that personal side, that our clients would be really important to us, each and every one of them. So that, I think, was one of the challenges that we faced in the messaging. And I'm sure that most companies who go through growth feel that same thing.
Absolutely. I think that one of the examples of what that looked like for you guys is we worked back and forth with that kind of word local. So we have local teams that are local to you. And we talked about how that's such a benefit to your clients because the team is close by in proximity, but it's also such a benefit to your employees because they have more well-rounded lives if they're not traveling all the time to client sites. But we found when we kept putting that word local in there in the messaging, it felt small. And we wanted to just make sure there were some really intentional word choices to make sure that we were presenting the level of kind of power and expertise that you guys carry with you, that level of like gravitas and founding, just strength inside of the team. And so there were some words like that we went away from it really intentionally. And I think it's such a good example to look back and say the messaging evolves over time with us. It's not, we don't look back and say, oh, it should have always been like this from the beginning, because when you were smaller and you were really focused on recruiting, to grow from 80-ish people to 140 people, you attracted a ton of talent, and to get the right people in there, we needed that culture messaging. They needed to feel like this company was a team around them. And so it's just really, you guys are such a great example of seeing that messaging evolve over time as you grow.
Yeah, and I think to your point, for to have that consistency in messaging for people, sometimes that's harder for people who have been here for a really long time, because they may try to reflect what we were 6 or 7 years ago, and it's harder to keep up, especially in multiple offices. But to your point, you really have to be genuine in your messaging and authentic. And if your messaging accurately represents the experience that your employee owners have and your clients have, they'll be able to express that, and it will be a consistent message. And I know some people like to make messaging aspirational, but if you make it too aspirational, there's going to be a disconnect or a level of disappointment between either the employee owner or the client when they don't experience that aspirational message that you presented.
Absolutely. That's so key. And we want to reduce that amount of friction as much as possible. The way that, research shows that engineers will do 60% of the buying process online before they want to talk to somebody. Well, at the point that they talk to you, the point that they talk to anybody on your sales team or anything like that, that should feel really seamless. What they look and see and experience online or content that they read should be a seamless transition to when they talk to you. It should look and feel very similar. And I think that that is something that we were able to achieve. Do you guys, when you have new hires, do you train them on messaging at all? How do you present who we are as a company when you hire somebody?
Really good question. So I do a lot of interviewing of individuals, and on that first screen call, I'll tell them about the company history. I'll tell them about Dave's founding story. We'll talk about our experiences. We have what we call our near-death experience in the early 2000s when our markets and key clients just changed on us very rapidly. We talk about our values. In the orientation process, we talk about our core values. We talk about who we are as a company. We talk about our social mission, the ESOP. So some of that does get presented. But, I think that culture is something that you have to experience. You can only tell so much in words. It's a lived experience that somebody has. So what are their interactions with others? What are their interactions internally, externally? That is really what forms over time. So I appreciate, we do some formal training, but it's something that has to be felt.
I love that. Even since the last time we worked with you guys to this previous time, you opened a new office. And is there anything that you do to make sure that culture carries through and the messaging carries through to a brand new office? What is that? How do you do that? I'm sure that's something that people struggle with as they expand and grow and try and regionally operate as well. What is that? How'd you do that?
Yeah. So that's one of those things that everybody wants the secret formula. How do you start a regional office? What's the most successful way to doing that? So I've talked to several other companies in our space. I'm part of a roundtable we've met for the past 15 years, and we're very open with our practices. And I would say that what would be considered a best practice is that you want somebody who has been with Hallam or with your company for a decent period of time to be in a leadership role when you open a new office. And the reason for that is multiple. One is they understand the culture. They understand the expectations and who the company is. They also have those relationships with key individuals across other offices, because I think for most of us, we don't open an office to be a standalone operating center. We're trying to have what we call one office with long hallways. So having those relationships formed is really important. So Morgan, I would say the most important thing to move the messaging is to have people, existing employees, relocate or at least be part of the startup effort there. Now, when we opened in Austin, we hired new staff. Our regional manager is from Austin, as are a couple of key employees. But we did have a few individuals who went down and relocated for a period of time. And that was really crucial to passing on that culture, the messaging, and overall the values of the organization.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that, it definitely is working for you guys. And so that's really helpful, I think. And like you said, just the question of the hour always in a large group, how do you open a regional office and make that work? Well, great. I don't have any other specific questions for you. But if people hear this and they're interested and want to connect with you, is LinkedIn the right way to do that? Is that an easy forum for you?
LinkedIn is the best way to do that.
Okay, perfect. And if people hear this and are interested, you can always visit Hallam's website and look at careers and openings and things they've got going on too.
And they can look forward to the new website and messaging being updated later this year.
Right? Yes, you can see all those. Yeah, take a look today and then take a look in a few months and be able to see those changes as well. That's awesome. Well, thank you for being with us today. This is really great. I know this is a valuable discussion, things to learn from as people grow and evolve over time and grow their companies. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome, Morgan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.